Okay, good. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Big Blue Bent podcast on the Triple B Network. I'm Jeff Joseph, your host. With me today are our panelists. I'll start with Matthew Conway. He's advisor with Capitol Hill Group, and he's a newly instituted member of the Conservative Party National Council. Let's hear it for you, Matthew. Yeah. We got
Although
the
we have
video.
to
Yeah.
we have to put the disclaimer: anything I say represents only me and not any
Yeah.
views of the Conservative Party of
Yeah,
Canada
that's true. That's true, right? Yeah, that's
of the Capitol Hill Group.
Well, I hear there's some kind of well, no, if you get out of line, I hear there's some kind of virtual cane that just pulls you. It'll just come across the screen. It just yank you back.
The virtual poke. Yeah.
In the meantime, wait. Yeah, okay. In the meantime, my mic went flying. Okay, and also with us is Christine Maydossian, who's an advisor at Ryan Affaires Publique here in Montreal. Welcome aboard, guys. Okay, so it's been a couple of weeks. And but you can guess the first topic, as usual, is our vaccine. So look, the simple rundown seems to be that Trudeau and company are in a very celebratory mood because we got over 3 million vaccines in 1 week. So we managed to double the amount of vaccines we got since December in one shot. They don't want to say that the 3 million or 4 million or so that are coming over the next couple of days includes 1.5 million AstraZeneca vaccines that they're borrowing from the United States that they have to pay back at a future date. But it's kind of fun. And for all this stuff about, they're telling us, I think now there's 40 million vaccines coming in the next 3 months. And then we're going to be up to 110 million vaccines in September. And in the meantime, at the same time, Doug Ford in Ontario has just announced that basically Ontario is going into an extended lockdown for 28 days. Quebec still got mostly curfews, and some of the orange zones went back into red zones. BC is doing what they call a circuit breaker. Alberta is saying it's dangerous to go outside. So all these vaccines, but we got a third wave at the same time, and we're almost as in a bad a position as we were last year. Matthew, go on a rant, please.
All right. So my parents were vaccinated on March 30th in Ontario. My aunt and my uncle were vaccinated, I believe, on the same day in Nova Scotia, who I remind people is governed by a Liberal government. Both sets got the Pfizer vaccine, and both have their appointment for their next shot in, drumroll, July, when the recommended, I believe, is 28 days or 3 weeks or something to that effect. So
21 and 28, depending on which brand.
Yeah. So, and my 50-year-old cousin, the daughter of said aunt and uncle, lives in Buffalo and got vaccinated and has her second appointment in the prescribed time. And when I told her that, she was saying, that her parents were in July, and I said my parents were in July too for their second shot, and which prompted her WTF on in our chat, and that pretty much sums it all. What the fuck? And it's essentially, I think at the end of the day, we're in a situation where the Trudeau Liberals are trying to look good and make the numbers look good. So that's why we have this particular stretch of time between the first and second doses. Who knows what that does if it's not in the recommended times. My parents and my aunt and uncle are all in their 70s, right? All of them have underlying health issues. Right. And literally my mother hasn't gone out except for here and there in over a year because it's dangerous. And I've been talking to colleagues and friends across the country who are tired, who have had it. Their mental health is suffering. Our idiot in chief decided to tell people, that they shouldn't go visit family over the holidays. Can't even say the word Easter, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's demoralizing for people. Now talk of a third wave. People are thinking they're going to be, they are locked down again. Some people are afraid that their children's schools are going to start closing, that they're going to have to work and take care of the children at the same time. The stress that adds. pads to people. Some people that I know, it's not a problem for me, but can't even go out and get their haircut in Toronto.
Yeah.
I'm a do-it-yourself kind of guy, but
Yeah.
that's not an option for everybody.
A little off the top.
A little off the top, yeah. Well, what I have left, but some people don't have that option,
No.
and it's seriously hurting their mental health. And like I said, and we've got the federal government, the Justin Trudeau government, blaming provinces, and we have the situation where my aunt and uncle got vaccinated, as I was mentioning, in Nova Scotia, which is governed provincially by a Liberal government. So or is he blaming those Liberals too for the problem and getting the problem is, at the end of the day, we don't have vaccines. You can't vaccinate. And I'm not saying provinces are perfect, because no bureaucracy is perfect. We just don't have the vaccines. You can't vaccine anybody without vaccines. And that is squarely on the shoulders of the federal government. And I just cannot believe in this country that more people aren't outraged at this incompetence of, they tried to make a deal with China. They got played, they got hoodwinked, they got screwed, whatever term you want to use. And now we're basically paying for their stupidity and their incompetence or their naivety, and as Canadians, and our economy is going down the shitter, and we're in a situation where you can't even do regular things. When I have my daughter, when she wants to do something, and I say, well, we can only go to the park because everything else is closed, and then she says to me, will we be able to when the virus is over? And I say, yes, I just don't know when that's going to be. And it's all nice and good to sit there and say, oh yeah, well, we have all these orders and whatever. Yeah, it's still, what difference does that make right now? And where we've got other countries way ahead of us and actually getting somewhat back to normal, whereas we're still stuck in the midst of a third wave. British Columbia earlier this week had the most numbers that they've ever had. It's frustrating that there isn't more outrage out there, and that these people are skating, they're getting with this, their incompetence are getting away with it. And I think that's where, as Canadians, we are too nice, and we're not pointing the finger at the federal government, and we're listening to their bullshit excuses and blaming everybody else but themselves, when the blame should be squarely on them, and their numbers should be 15% of public opinion polls. Oh yeah, and my other rant is against people who liberals who basically go after people who just want to go have a beer on a patio somewhere and help local businesses that are going under. But then those people who want to do that get the third degree from liberal sympathizers and Kool-Aid drinkers that basically say, well, you should stay home like everybody else. Well, guess what? People, that might work for you, buddy, but doesn't work for everybody's mental health. People need to go and talk to people. They need human contact. There is a big price to pay for all this incompetence, and we're going to see it for years to come, not only for our economy, but for mental health in general. And that's squarely on the shoulders of one man and his government, and that's Justin Trudeau. And if anybody who's not a conservative listening to this podcast, for God's sakes, talk to people and do not vote for this idiot again. He does not deserve your vote.
Okay, just Christine, I'll get you a second, but Dr. Roy's about to come in, and then I'll do a nice little edit here, and then we'll resume. So hang on, we'll just give the doc a sec here.
Tunnel, and that things were getting better, and we were going to be able to start our economy again in a few short weeks. And look what happens. Our cases went up very quickly. The variants are picking up. Three different parts of the province are in another lockdown. We had about 40 people or over 40 people catch COVID at a gym in Quebec City.
It's about 120 now from that, by the way.
Well, there you
over.
Go. And we're kind of right back where we were a couple of months ago. In Ontario, yesterday, for example, I was out, taking a walk with my brother and my dog on Queen Street West. So busy. Everybody is trying to get out as much as possible before the lockdown starts tonight. Yeah. So I think that, again, a few things at play here. And obviously, Matt talked about the culprit. We have to really start thinking more about this balance between the mental health of people and our economy and the rest, and the way the COVID-19 crisis is impacting our health, our hospitals, etc. Because it seems like I was just watching CTV News, I think, and Dr. Sharkawi was talking, and he was saying shutting down things is not the answer anymore. And I get it. I mean, look, everybody has an opinion.
Did he say that? Wow, that's a cool.
He talked about.
If you keep doing the same thing.
Hang on, let Christine finish her point.
No, everybody has an opinion on things, and I mean, we don't even know what to say or what to hear anymore. But the reality is, regardless of who we're talking to or who's making the decision, we really have to start talking about that balance and working towards that balance, because we're now in a year of this crisis. I mean, there are people who have lost their living over and over and over again. Restaurants in Toronto just opened their terraces 2 weeks ago and bought everything they had to buy and sort of figured it out. And now they're being told to close again. I get it. Look, I completely understand. I'm not saying one person is right and one person is wrong. What I'm saying is we have to find that balance. It's difficult. You can't blame public officials. At the end of the day, local public officials, because what's Doug going to do? I mean, we don't have our vaccines like Matt. What's he going to do? Is he going to risk have people getting sick? I mean, he has to answer to that. There is a higher government structure there that is to blame for a lot of the problems that we're having. And Matt elaborated on that, absolutely. But it's there that we have to start talking about this balance, because we can't go another 6 months with shutdowns. It's just not possible. It's not possible for people who have small businesses, people who are working in the hospitality sector, in tourism, people who are working in the entertainment industry that nobody even talks about, right? People don't, and people do want to get out. I mean, I work with the theater sector in Quebec, and I was talking to one of our theaters, the head of one of our theaters, and he was telling me, Christine, we're sold out. Whatever we are able to do in the next few months is so because everybody wants to get out. Everybody wants to participate, help with the economic recovery. So what do we need to do? I think that the larger question here is, what do we need to do to find that balance? Because, and obviously a large part of that is we really got to get this vaccine rollout properly. Look, the AstraZeneca vaccine is proving to be something that people don't want to take. Look, we have lots and lots of thousands, from what I understand, in Ontario and in Quebec, unfilled vaccine appointments. That's a result of the fact that, this AstraZeneca vaccine, for the reasons that they say, people don't feel safe taking it, right? So look, so many things at play. There are a million issues here, but I think the top priority for, authorities should be, where is that balance and how are we going to find it? Because we can't just keep closing the world down or closing our country down. People are moving ahead in the States. I mean, in Europe, it's a different story because they kind of really opened things up and they blew up in their face.
UK's doing pretty good.
Well, I think we're going to have to see after the Easter holidays what the numbers are, right? But like France is in a disastrous state.
Yeah, no, I know.
Germany was in a shutdown a couple of weeks ago. I think that's continuing. I mean, Italy as well. So where is that balance? I mean, that's my concern, is where are we going to start, when and how are we going to deal with this balance? That's okay. That, because to be able to move forward, it's the only thing that matters.
Yeah. By the way, Dr. Roy Eappen has now joined us. He was a little late coming into the broadcast. He's an endocrinologist and internal medicine specialist, and he's our medical expert. So, Dr. Roy, from a medical perspective, I think maybe you want to talk about, what's going on with these lockdowns at the same time with all the vaccines supposedly coming in, and then maybe your take on the variants and themselves. Are should we be alarmed? Should we be worried about hospitalizations and ICUs and what have it? But anyway, feel free to talk.
So we have been ranting and raving for a year that the ICUs are going to be overwhelmed. The ICU is going to be overwhelmed. So why haven't we added ICU beds? Why haven't we hired more nurses? Why haven't we brought in more people? I mean, you're talking about a province of 15 million people with 300 people in the ICU. I mean, think about that for a moment. Yeah. You are causing massive harm in massive ways. And this is becoming increasingly evident. This is not a solution. This was never a solution. I could have seen it at the beginning to perhaps stop the spread, but you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, and we get nowhere. You know, and if you look at some of these lockdowns, the rates keep going up in spite of the lockdowns. What are the problems in Ontario? Many of the cases are done with essential workers in places like Amazon.
Yep.
The Amazon warehouse was the
fulfillment
source
warehouse,
of 900 of those infections.
Yep.
So why aren't we doing things like vaccinating the Amazon staff and
Yep.
vaccinating people? So this is again, I keep saying it's a war on the poor by rich people who think that, you know, it's okay for them, but, you know, the rest of them are losing their livelihoods. Christine's completely right. Doug has just closed down restaurants, which probably just bought food and stuff.
They did.
And it's going to rot.
Yeah.
You know, these are places that were standing on a razor thin edge of bankruptcy, and they're going to go. Let me tell you another story. I have a friend in Ottawa whose daughter is deathly ill from anorexia. And there's you know, this is a lethal condition in a 17-year-old, and there's a 3-month wait to get into the hospital.
Yeah.
So we are sacrificing people for the sake of very, very dubious data. I mean, I really think that the AstraZeneca virus is probably quite safe. But it has caused, I've looked at some of these studies and they were showing very small numbers of clotting factors. But you know what? It's what we have right now, and it's what we should use. So unfortunately, I'm sure Matthew and our other friends have made the point that Trudeau has done a terrible job with all of this. But, California is going to open spaces for, theaters and ballparks.
Yeah.
We are locked in, and Tam keeps saying, don't go. Trudeau can't even say the word Easter in his greetings. He said it's a long weekend, so don't go and see your family. As a Christian, I find it deeply offensive that he can't even mention the word Easter. I don't know. I mean,
do you recall? Do you recall what he did last year at Easter weekend?
No.
Just to refresh everybody. So last year at Easter weekend, at the time, the Quebec had sealed its border to Ontario. Trudeau was sitting at Rideau. His family a week earlier, actually the day Sophie's quarantine had ended, Sophie took the kids over to Harrington Lake in Quebec. So Easter weekend, Trudeau hopped in his car, crossed the sealed border into Quebec to spend the weekend with his family at Harrington Lake. That was last Easter when he could act. When I think he could say the word. This year, apparently, he can't say the word.
Well, actually, worse, he was telling people not to do that, and
while telling people to stay home.
I don't begrudge somebody going to see their family, but don't go on the public place, tell people not to do it, and then do it yourself.
They're all hypocrites.
Yeah.
The officer in Vancouver and the BC people have actually been pretty reasonable and have not actually locked down until now. Now they're locking down. They've decided to lock down. And what did she do? She took a helicopter to Victoria Island to see her family while she cut down the ferries going to Vancouver Island because she didn't want people going to visit. So, I can't blame these people. These people are not paying any attention to 80% of the population, and are, it's the oligarchs looking at their own best interests without looking at the best interests of everyone else. The variants may be a problem, but you know what? If you don't, I think Chris Whitey, who is the chief health officer in the United Kingdom, recently said that we will have to learn how to get used to this virus. We can't just keep doing this. It's not a virus that kills like the Black Plague. The numbers of deaths, if you look from year to year, look like they're almost the same. So at some point, we have to get used to the virus. Let's use the vaccines in a good way. and get ourselves out of this mess. Because, you know, if we keep this up, we'll all be broke.
Yeah, listen, yeah, exactly. I think this whole touch on about the battle of the rich and the poor, because if you look again, these breakouts always seem to come from, in general, they do happen in the high density
Yeah.
neighborhoods, typically where you have the working poor or the not quite middle class yet, and you have those large families, and one or two guys going out working on the front lines, just in a retail store or the Amazon fulfillment center. They come home, they've got the virus, and next thing you know, 8 people have got the virus, and it magnifies. And the scary part is it's true. All these medical experts and politicians throughout have still been collecting 100% of their paychecks. They can work from home in their pajamas 98% of the time or more, and
But
they're dictating it. And they get into this. We're all supposed to be in this together, but they constantly, people start breaking out. They're looking to attack it. It literally is the textbook definition of divisiveness, and I don't. There's no other way to put it. It's horribly wrong. Um, and like I said, and I've said this repeatedly, and this whole thing with the whole thing with the vaccines in general, this should not have happened at all. We shouldn't be in any position where we're having people fight over who should get the vaccines ahead of it. Should the teachers get it ahead of the frontline workers? Who should get it ahead of the 70-year-olds? We should have been. The United States now is somewhere 210 million vaccines out there. I think about 160 million are injected. We could have been working with them. They're our neighbor right next door. We've worked. Stephen Harper, we had the auto crisis. We had the global financial meltdown. We had the auto crisis. Stephen Harper sat with the Obama administration and the McGuinty government in Ontario, liberal. And they said, listen, we did a bailout. We saved the audio industry. They had H1N1. Everybody got their crap. Canada made its own vaccines, vaccinated 40% of the population. What Trudeau in particular, look at, there's mistakes on the provincial level. Let's not kid ourselves, particularly in long-term care facilities. But what Trudeau is doing now, listen, the other things that Trudeau did, the scandals, whatever, look, in the end, it's money, it's ill-thinking personnel, whatever. People are dying because of this goof up. And I don't know what it's going to take for a lot of Canadians to finally wake up and see the light. I mean, Matthew, I don't want to go into the Matthew thing, but we got to wake up and see what this is all about. I mean, this is crazy. And Trudeau's Trudeau's guys are treating this like a big game. They'll point fingers here, there, and then they're the hero now. But in the meantime, for all this raining of vaccines, where is the exit? Where's the financing, and where's the plan to get the hospitality industry going, to get the airline industry going, et cetera, et cetera? And now I'm going to go to Christine because she's been very.
I just wanted to add one very quick thing. So what I was trying to get at before is there is a serious lack of national leadership here. The local authorities, whether they're provincial leaders or their municipal leaders, yes, there are some exceptions to the rule. Completely understand that. There are some people out there who are doing things they shouldn't.
Yep.
But because they're tied closer to their communities, these more local politicians are having a hard time choosing between the economy and the health of their citizens for obvious reasons, right? I mean, Doug or Premier Legault or whatever, I mean, they see these numbers and they probably know a lot more than we do, right? They know like how difficult it is in the hospitals. They know how difficult it is in the long-term care homes. And so for them, it's like, well, we don't want any more people to die. We're going to shut things down. But the key issue here is that our national leadership didn't do what it needed to do to avoid these problems in the first place. Right. And so that's, I think, and, as we talk about it, it becomes a lot more clear.
Yeah.
We had done what the US, I mean, we couldn't do exactly what the US did, but if our national leadership had the foresight to deal with this issue in an effective way 6-8 months ago, even a year ago, even over a year ago before this thing hit us hard, then we would not be in this position right now. We would have our vaccines. We would have proper funding where it was required. We would have a good plan forward for the economy. We have none of those things. We had a finance minister who resigned in the middle of all of it, right? We
Yep.
had a stupid governor general scandal that took the energy away when we had to plan for this supposed third wave. I mean, we have a federal government that's not fit to deal with this issue. I mean, other issues, but this issue in particular, right? And I think that's where the real problem lies. At
Yeah.
least, you know.
Yeah,
Well,
no, they've shown time and time again how incompetent they are, and then when they're called out on it, they blame everybody else.
Exactly.
And their solution is, let's borrow more money and let's print more money. Well, you know what? That stops eventually. And Jeff brought up Stephen Harper and the great recession back in 08 and 09, where liberals still blame him for running deficits they called for at the time, because or else they would bring down his government.
They weren't big enough.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then they tout their fiscal record, and then all of a sudden look at their fiscal record now, and then we've got Chrystia Freeland. I'd like sources of telling me that this will be the biggest spending budget in history, and we're not just talking like they're going to go after everything and spend, and is it all correlated to COVID? No, actually, there will be a lot of stuff that they're going to try to sneak through because they're trying to buy themselves an election, and with our money, and that's the thing, and they on every issue they are constantly like 3-6 months behind everything. Like there is no foresight. It's almost, there's no forward planning. It's all like, let's put our finger in the air and let's see where the wind is blowing.
No, you have to remember something. It's not our money. You're very incorrect. You ask the liberals, it's their money.
Oh yeah,
it's the government's money. They invested $400 billion or and up, so you didn't have to. Just let's get that straight, okay? Christine, go ahead. Christine,
I was going. What was I going to say? I was going to say, Matt. What were you saying? Gosh, it was like a very.
Well, they're always behind the 8 ball because they're always late and planning for things and the other thing too is when the idea comes from somebody else, then it's automatically a bad idea. And
it's not just you know what, Matthew? The problem is if it was just a bad idea, it'd be like you're having a debate and an argument, but they always make it's a bad idea from a bad person.
Yeah.
It's always personal these days. Yeah. That is the most disturbing thing that has gone on in this topic and political discourse in general since 2015. I mean, you're not only wrong to them, you're a Neanderthal, you're an ambulance chaser, you're this, you're that, you're a climate change, you're a denier, you're like a Holocaust. Like it's so personal like that. And then these are the people who get really upset about divisiveness. There's nothing more divisive than taking any kind of debate and making it personal.
Well,
it's as simple as that.
Somebody might listen to my rant off the top and say, well, you got personal. Yeah, because I've been attacked constantly by that side for just being a conservative. And I like to think of myself as a pragmatic conservative, and some would call me probably a moderate conservative. But you're attacked personally, you're attacked, like all what you just described, enough. And, let's fight back. And as Dino would say in earlier episodes, and it's just enough is enough. And I'm not going to take your crap anymore. And we're going to call a spade, and a spade is they are incompetent.
And listen, and I think what's also sorry, Christine, I'll let you go.
I remembered what I was going to say.
So okay, now then you say it, and then I'll speak. Go ahead, Christine.
I was just going to say, in fact, you were talking about the spending. There have been so many funding announcements, campaign-style funding announcements in the past 3 weeks, whether they're happening in communities, whether they're happening in different industries. Culture is getting a lot of funding, sort of very kind of quietly. So they're the handouts are not going to decrease; they're going to increase. And now with the economic recovery, I mean, what better way to buy a vote than to just hand or it's not real money; it's earmarked money. That's what people always forget, right? It's money that's planned to be given if it's available. So,
and let's remember all the broken promises of liberal campaigns past, right? So I think people need to remember that. It goes back to my joke, liberal bread books belong in the fiction section at local libraries, because that's exactly what they are. So I would just say to people, don't get fooled.
Well, listen, Listen, if they wanted to invest in stimulus again, remember, what was it, 2016, they had the so-called Invest in Canada infrastructure program. What was it, 188 billion or 200 billion dollars that the Auditor General said there's almost nothing of it. There's nothing to show
Yep.
for it. There's literally nothing. So you'd like to say, listen, if you want to stimulate the economy, you'd probably want to get it from the program you started 5 years ago. But lo and behold, you haven't done anything. Anyway, Christine, go ahead.
This is a very, I've been watching so much or what happened around me, and we haven't had a conversation for so long that I just keep remembering things that people
It's
said.
a lot of energy today.
Well, what I was going to say actually is, in the time of Flaherty, I was a student in France when Flaherty was a finance minister. And I can't tell you how many times in class I was doing a lot of economics and monetary policy. My professors were people, who were diplomats and economists and people who were basically running the government. I had so many of my professors tell me, we were all in France, we were all very, very impressed. Just imagine for a second, we were all very impressed with the way your finance minister guided your country through the economic crisis. And I felt such sense of pride, I thought, wow. Yeah. And it was, like I said, like fairly distinguished people saying that to me, from another country. So I don't think they would be saying the same thing now. And that says a lot.
People who are probably not conservatives to start with.
This was during, who was president?
Sarkozy.
It was probably Sarkozy, 2009.
But academia is not known as a conservative hotbed, right?
No, not exactly.
Yeah.
Doc, did you have anything else here, or?
Well, I mean, your point about the money, I want to know, they have billions of dollars of spending. I have no idea where this money is going. They bought a lot of ventilators. Most of them they didn't use. $580 million worth of ventilators. They used 20 or 30. Most of the rest of them are not approved by Health Canada. Always to a liberal-friendly source. That was a Liberal MP in Quebec. All kinds that single source contracts that we don't know what the details are. McKenna has a whole bunch of these things. And then they take money away from the Auditor General to make sure that he can't find out where these crooks have actually sent the money. I mean, I know liberals like to help their friends and make them all rich. But I mean, this government, I mean, some of this has gone to serve and other things, but there's a lot of money that's not accounted for.
No, I know that's a major problem. I don't know.
Actually, even worse than that, every time an opposition MP, and I'm not just saying conservatives, but also other opposition parties are looking for where that money's gone or just to ask questions, they get branded as being part of the problem, and that they're keeping money away from people that need the money, and it's just like, vote for this, but don't ask any questions, or if you ask questions, you're evil. Looking at you, Adam Vaughan, and other Liberal MPs.
That backbench.
No, it's just like
I still can't believe he's an MP.
Well, I tweeted earlier this week, take his Twitter, take his phone away from him. It's embarrassing. Like, do him a favor. And I would actually surmise the same thing for Ryan Turnbull and Mark Gertson, because those people, I know they probably have a lot of gold stars in their books in that PMO next to their names, and that they're doing the God's work, if you will, God being Justin Trudeau in their case. And but like, these people are embarrassing themselves. It's just like, how can you be a level-headed person and tweet those things? It's not even partisanship. It's beyond partisanship. It's like what Jeff always calls it. It's a cult, right? And they fully like, if they have, put it this way, if they're doing this and they actually believe this, that the Kool-Aid is really, really spectacular.
Yeah, well, in Adam Vaughan's case, and I always say, it's not only just hit. It's just anytime I watch this guy talk, especially more these days. And by the way, for people who don't know, he actually worked. He was in television, City TV in Toronto, and he actually worked at the top for actually a few years alongside Ben Chin, who's one of our PMO special advisors, who seems to be in a lot of hot water involving but it seems to be in hot water about a lot of things at any given time. But I also wanted to mention that, as offensive as Adam is, the only person I really feel sorry for is his late father, Colin, who used to also be a reporter at City TV in Toronto. And I keep thinking to myself, that man must be turning himself in the grave. He must be like a drill. He must be drilled. He must have gone 18 feet more under, because Colin Vaughan, who leaned kind of NDP-ish social side, he was a marvel. You know what? He was a marvelous man. He had interesting viewpoints all the time. A fantastic. And I can't think. I'm thinking. I watch his son right now, and I think his if his father was alive, I would honestly believe that Colin would strangle him. I just he would never put up with some of the crap that Adam does. But
Well, I was
just
going to say, I thought it was conservatives that were angry and mean, but I don't know. There's a lot of hate in that man, and
Yeah.
Oh, there
a
is.
lot.
it's not
There-
normal. I'm
there
sorry.
is.
Like they're like, dude, go see somebody. It's not normal to be that hateful.
What
I
about that?
sense that. I sense that when I mean, I was
Yeah.
around
fits-
him quite a bit when I worked for the mayor.
I was going to say he probably
I
fits
did,
nicely in Toronto.
I did sense that. Some days I even thought to myself, I mean, how much do you hate yourself that you're actually acting this way towards another human being?
Yeah.
See, here's the thing. So I always joke that, obviously these guys didn't make it into cabinet, and Adam Vaughan, didn't make it into cabinet. People will say, well, because of, there's other Toronto MPs, and there, you don't want to have one geographical place being overrepresented. I'm starting to wonder if Adam Vaughan has some sort of, and I'm just speculating here, allegedly, has any security issues in his file in his security checkpoint. And that's why he can't get to cabinet, and he's bitter about that. So I'm just throwing it out there. Like, I'm not saying I don't have any information. It's just like I look at the man, and that's like one hateful, spiteful, bitter man. And it's like, we need better people in politics. I don't care what party you're from, but Adam Vaughan of this world are the problems. And I would say the same thing for certain, if a conservative MP would be like that. Like, no, we don't need people like that.
No.
And
No, absolutely not.
they do absolutely zero for the quality of public discourse, and they actually contribute zero to helping people at the end of the day.
Sorry, Matt, I was just going to say, I mean, that is their job, right? As a public official, your job is to be helpful to your constituents, whether they're across the country or located in a little, county. And I think the Liberals have actually forgotten that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, and he's a parliamentary secretary. So by ricochet, his behavior is sanctioned by the prime minister. And that's the only conclusion, because anybody else would have told them, hey, you know what, stay off Twitter. So it's sanctioned. And if it's sanctioned, then it's discussing on the Trudeau brand. Let's put it that way. Like, you cannot be this hateful and this stupid. And but apparently, yes, you can. And it's sanctioned.
Okay. I think that's enough. You know what? Let's go on and talk about the Conservative Party. And so 2 weekends ago, they held their first ever virtual national convention. We have the Liberals and the NDP are coming up next weekend, I believe, but the Conservatives kicked it off last weekend. And you know what? It was a interesting affair. I think all of us were delegates. It was kind of different. Things we kind of missed, things that were kind of good. But leave it to the good old media. The unfortunate thing is when we watch the media's reaction to this, I can't help but thinking to myself that we are still the only party, and to her credit, Ron Ambrose started this in 2016. The convention was made open to the media. They've had open observer access to everything that goes on, so they get to see the big blue tent in action. And lo and behold, you learn that they're people, they're delegates and people in different geographical locations that may not see things exactly eye to eye, but there are things people can agree on, things that not. So, but of everything to come, of all the things to come out, I mean, the showcase at the end was obviously Aaron O'Toole's speech and kind of laying down his base platform that I'm assuming he's going to carry into whenever the next election is. But of course, the highlight of all, I could have named about 5 things that could have been the highlight from a media standpoint, but you knew the media are going to pick on something. So they decided to pick on one of the policy resolutions that was a climate change environment involved policy resolution proposal. It was actually literally it was a modification to an existing proposal. It was brought forth by the Portneuf riding Joël Gaudin, the MP, good guy. It was brought on, and it essentially just added 3 small lines to an existing environmental policy, which involved green technology, by the way. And he just wanted to add the line, climate change is real. So it went to the delegate vote. 54% voted against the resolution. If you looked at the geographical breakdowns, Quebec and the Maritimes, those delegates largely supported it. The West slightly didn't, basically did not. I think, personally, my opinion, I think the Ontario delegation ultimately killed it because they voted about 58% against. But now the Liberals and the media made this whole thing. Well, you see, the Conservative Party denies that climate change is real. Matthew, you want give us a National Council hot take on this one?
Well, 2 things. So Kim Campbell was right. Campaign is not the time to talk policy, and I'm afraid that policy convention may not be the time to talk policy either, especially if the media is involved, because they got it spectacularly wrong. That line about climate change was not a main part of that particular resolution. It was a line in it. And I listened to the debate. I was next to my computer at that time. And so there was, I think, one guy, 1.5 people, I guess if you want to call it, that talked about against because of the climate change. So yeah, are we going to have to close down our policy discussions to the media because we don't want our internal laundry getting out because they got it spectacularly wrong? To say that climate change was debated at the convention is stretching the word debate to elastic to the point where it breaks. That wasn't what that debate was about. The other thing too is there was a tweet by David Hurley, of all people, who said that we should not scoff or scorn people out west in Alberta and Saskatchewan specifically, because this is their livelihoods. This is what they depend on to live. Their prosperity comes from that, and to sit there and mock them and make fun of them is the wrong approach, and to having a good debate in this country. And that comes from liberal David Hurley. I think liberals should listen to him. But yeah, no, the media got it spectacularly wrong. I'm wondering if the people, because they always say, well, a reporter writes the article and somebody else writes the headline. Well, in both cases, they got it spectacularly wrong. And it's just like there's no nuance, there was no nothing. And you're right. I think probably the difference was the Ontario delegates. Could that resolution been written better? Yeah, they could have. Would have probably in a normal in-person convention been written up in a certain way, but then gone through the workshop, amended, and then gone to, and if it was one of the top 30, because this was the top, whatever, 30 or whatever resolutions, and 34. Then went 34 to get voted on. Usually at a policy convention, there's over 70, which only the top from the workshops, amended or not, make it to the floor for the plenary, right? So one would have made it, even if, and it would have been amended so it could be, likable to everybody across the country, passed no problem, right? So we got a situation where there's a particular resolution, it's voted on. The media doesn't get it right, of course. The leader said, I don't know how many times over the weekend, that climate change is real and we're going to have a robust plan. None of that is reported. So that particular sentence that wasn't the main part of that resolution derails part of the convention. It's not even what was said. And then we're being branded as these dinosaurs, these climate change deniers, and no, we're not. And I think that there's this is willful blindness on the part of the media, and I'm going to call them out on it. Like I'm sorry, the people that did the reporting on this did a piss poor job of doing their job, and I think they quite frankly owe a lot of us an apology for that. But that being said, it is what it is. It's done. We should expect that, but our leader Aaron O'Toole has said it constantly. Climate change is real. We were going to have a robust environmental plan. He's going to scrap the carbon tax because that's not an effective way, and he's going to make sure that our plan, because let's remember, the greenest prime minister voted in this country was named Brian Mulroney, who happened to be who happens to be a conservative. Emissions went up under Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin, despite all their great pronouncements, right?
Astronomically up, by the way.
Emissions actually went down under Stephen Harper. Oh, and Justin Trudeau's Liberals actually adopted his measures, as their standards. So apparently he wasn't that bad, because if his standards were used, and so this is all about confiscating and making people forget their disastrous record on everything, and just trying to stir up people for the sake of stirring up people. And once again, the media bought it, bit down on the hook, and got reeled in by the Liberals.
Well, and before Christine, I'll let you chime in a second, and I should really point out that the existing policy itself actually contains the phrase climate change twice. Just before the three small paragraphs in question, right before it actually talks about how a climate change should be addressed as a global solution, but it must involve the world's largest emitters, including China and the United States. Specifically says that. And in the final paragraph, it says that we have to take a look at addressing the climate change situation in the Arctic. I mean, you couldn't possibly, that's what everybody wants to talk about. It's right there. It stayed. That didn't go away.
Isn't that first year journalism school? Wouldn't that be pertinent to put it in your article?
It's fundamental reading literacy. I don't like, anyways, Christine, you want to comment or?
I don't think the issue is that we're climate change deniers. I think as conservatives, we take into account the needs of everybody across this country. And correct. I think Matt was very, very right when he pointed out that the West depends, their economy more or less depends, on that industry. So I think that as much as the Liberals want to say that we don't believe in climate change, which is absolutely not true, we are actually the ones who are considering everybody instead of just a small group of people who are, self-interested. And that's a very, very important point, I think, that we need to focus on. Because by them saying that we're climate change deniers, they're basically, saying that, well, the people in the West don't matter, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is that one of the largest, if not largest at some point in time, industry in this country was petroleum.
Yeah.
So, it's almost like they have an understanding of that. It's easy to keep interest groups happy. That's something that I learned in municipal government. It's very, very easy to keep interest groups happy. You just say whatever you want, no substance. But if you really want to make a difference, on an issue, then you have to consider all the stakeholders, whether they're for or against. And they're always winning. I mean, winning in the media. And of course, they sort of own the media, so that's not our fault. But they're always winning in the media on this because they're not really, they just say, well, they don't believe in climate change. But where's the depth of that issue? Talk about the depth of that issue. And maybe that's where we can sort of, start saying, well, fine, but then you don't care about half the country. You don't care about the economy of like the whole entire West, right? So
I just want to draw a parallel, sorry, before we get to Dr.
Roy, go ahead.
Before I forget this. So when I worked for Caroline Mulroney in Francophone Affairs, I always used to say that the Liberals make grand pronouncements but do little. Conservatives don't make pronouncements and actually get something done. And I said it to anybody who would listen, and I believe this to this day, that Caroline Mulroney has done more for Francophones in Ontario in 3 years
Boy, is she
than the
ever.
Liberals did in 15 years. Okay.
Easily.
And anybody wants to argue with me, because I know those files very well because I worked on a lot of them. So
You won't get it. Not from me.
no, but no, all that to say is that they talked a good game for those 15 years, but did jack shit. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
But big pronouncements, and that makes great media headlines and makes great, great press releases. But when we did something, we kept quiet. But when we announced it, because we didn't want to jeopardize any project before it was all our I's were dotted and our T's were crossed, and that's the same thing on the environmental file. Conservatives work to get it right. Liberals make these great aspirational pronouncements, but do nothing, and sit on their hands and basically wrap their head their in the flag, in the climate change flag, but do nothing. And I think people need to realize, look at the records. Don't take my word for it. Go look at the records and see for yourself. And that's all I can say. Go look at the records, see for yourself. Like I said, don't take my word for it. But and we could sit there and say this for a lot of files, but it's the parallel is amazing on the environmental file. I'm not saying that we as conservatives have always gotten it right, but that being said, just to sit there and add a carbon tax and then do nothing else, I'm sorry, that doesn't qualify for me as actually doing something productive.
Doc, you want to be a climate specialist here?
Well, I'm skeptical of everything. So
yes, I know.
I don't actually believe that the Liberals believe any of this themselves, because look, they don't do anything about it. They actually do nothing about this. That just like they're all for the Native people, the Indigenous people, until it comes to actually doing something for the Indigenous people. They're all for women's rights until it comes to doing something for women's rights. All these people just do is virtue signal, virtue signal, virtue signal, and they accomplish literally nothing. And they do window dressing and then send money to their friends to do that. So I think that we get things done. They, on the other hand, say that they believe in things, and then, remember when Mr. Trudeau said, thanks for your donation to those Indigenous people who were talking about water.
Oh, yeah.
We still don't have fresh water for the Indigenous people here. I mean, and the other thing that we have to, the energy industry is one of the ways that our Indigenous people are going to get out of some of the problems that they have. Many of these pipelines, many of these projects are backed by Native people, by Indigenous people, and we should listen to them too. I think they are good stewards of the land, and I think we need to listen to them.
Yeah, 100% cooperate. There's a couple points I wanted to bring out on this. I just said, first of all, from the policy standpoint, I found a tremendous irony that we went about this whole climate change is real. Actually, just a couple of proposals. Now, if people who don't know, in the convention, the proposals come up basically in the order of popularity. So the most popular resolution at the Ideas Lab stage starts, and then it goes down, down, down. So 2 or 3 proposals before it was a modification to what we call the long-term energy framework. And this is largely in the name of the West. We actually voted in that thing. We took out all reference. It should be right up the Liberals' alley, because what they did is there must have been at least a dozen references to the phrase fossil fuels. In that framework, we actually voted by a super strong majority to take the words fossil fuels right out of our long-term energy framework. And we added in stuff like hydrocarbons, renewable energy. It was right up there. I have yet to see one word said about this. So that's number one.
Crickets.
Complete crickets. Number 2, to some extent, the Conservative Party kind of punches their own selves in the face here, because I would really wish for Erin O'Toole, for anybody, to really, we've spent a couple of elections just kind of ducking this issue, listen, I understand we're never going to win on in the left mentality. The conservatives are never going to propose or say anything that they'll ever agree with or think is right or whatever. We should finally, it's been 6 years now, for God's sakes, why don't we go on the offensive about the liberal record on climate change? Because for 6 years, I have seen nothing except the party merchandising T-shirts that say climate change is real. They think that's the hottest, because it's like everything they do. They're kind of woke. They make a cute little phrase, but when you actually look at what they've done, they've actually done absolutely nothing. So GHG and greenhouse gas emissions since Harper left have gone up. This group has done nothing except propose a carbon tax which is a glorified rebate scheme where they go to the poor Canadians and say, listen, we'll tax you, but we'll make you rich with these rebates. I mean, it's the silliest thing. As an economist saying, I don't understand it. It makes literally no sense. So it's a tax giveaway. It has nothing to do with climate. The only thing that's gotten the GHGs held in check or not down was the pandemic last year. Great. So we've spent $400 billion plus to bring GHG emissions down. Then they'll shoot right up because the Liberals still do not have a plan. I mean, we got to go at them like this. It was funny because I went on Twitter about this when I saw the Liberals merchandising these climate change is real T-shirts. And I said, we should make one that just says, I was promised a liberal climate change policy for 6 years, and all I've got to show for it is this lousy T-shirt. And it was funny because I got this huge response from it, including a like from, of all people, Nikki Ashton, the NDP, which led me to a whole bunch of NDP people all of a sudden loving me. I guess they'll read my account and realize that's probably a bad idea. But
no, remember really that.
Yeah,
I was going to say, sorry. Remember that '80s commercial, Wendy's going after McDonald's, saying, "Where's the beef? Where's the beef? Where's the plan?" That should be our T-shirt right there. Hashtag, where's your plan?
Where's the liberal plan?
Yep.
Like, we finally should just stand up if it comes up at all. Because I think, I hate to say it, but in the scheme of things right now, worrying about steadying climate is probably a little low on the list of the average Canadian priority. I think they want to have stable jobs, money back in their pocket, stuff like that. I think that's probably a little bit more essential. Not that climate is not important and stuff but climate needs to encompass everything. It can't just be the sky. How about the water? How about all this untreated sewage that's still spewing into the lakes at billions of liters a year? Nothing's been done there. We said the indigenous with clean water, still reservations without it. The freaking the trees, right? With 2 billion when Greta Thunberg came here, 2 billion trees. We're gonna plant 2 billion trees. They haven't planted one yet. This is 2 years ago. They haven't planted one, and then they said, "Oh, it's going to take 10. Well, we need 10 years. Now it's 10 years. Oh, and it's a little more expensive than $1.50 a tree. Oh, gee, who couldn't have figured that out? So, what have they done? Like, if I'm a conservative and they want to come up with that issue, I'd go for once. Let's go on the offensive already because these guys have done nothing. Nothing.
They use our tax dollars to pay their friends who work in marketing firms to come up with these taglines. That's what they do, right? I mean, I could name names, I won't, but we all know who these people
are. Well, we should use our friends too.
Yeah, and our friends are much smarter.
Fight fire with fire. It's game over. And you talked about the raw sewage. Well, a lot of those approvals came from the desk of Catherine McKenna. Miss Climate Change and Miss Environment. This is your record. You now have a record, and this is your record. And where's the beef?
I know.
Absolutely.
Is.
Although apparently eating beef these days is probably a bad thing too. But that's.
Anyways, so enough with the climate. So Aaron delivered his. Actually, you know what? I have to get. You know what? I sometimes pick on Aaron a little bit, but I have to tell you, and as I watched him deliver his speech, first of all, he's lost a little weight. Looks good. Looks pretty good. You know what? He delivered this 5-point plan. I actually personally, some of my conservative colleagues may disagree with me on this one, but I actually think, he did a pretty good job here. It's something to start with. He talked about mental health as like the number 3. We could argue if maybe it should be like the number 2, but you know what? He put it out there, and you know what? And to the journalists and the networks, I wish we'd finally, it's great that we've had all these epidemiologists and highly trained doctors. You know what? I wish we'd start getting the psychologists and the psychiatrists on
Yeah.
there, the people, because I don't think the average Canadian, who, especially one who tries to sit and watch the media here, can have begun to contemplate what's going on in the area of mental health, drug overdoses, all this area. It's a bad, bad thing. So really, Aaron has to be given major credit for finally being somebody in Ottawa who's acknowledged that part and has made it a key part of a platform. For that,
Well, it's
like
not
I
just
said,
a,
I know you did a good job, but
yeah.
Matthew, here, you
Yeah, it's not just a tagline for the mental health, because Aaron
No.
was one co-founders of the True Patriot Love Foundation,
for veterans.
which helps mental health issues for veterans. So
Yeah.
this is something, and he and his wife have talked about there's mental health issues in their families,
Yeah.
and Rebecca has talked about going off Twitter for her own mental health, the cesspool that is Twitter. As people are attacking her husband, but also the family, and it's like people give your head a shakes when you're going after people's family. But and what people don't understand, it's easy to give. Well, it's not easy to give a speech to a room full of people, but he was giving that speech to a camera and 10 staffers, right? Technical people and a couple of other staffers, and that's all the Ottawa Health was allowing in the room. And it's like you're literally giving a speech to an empty room. It's like waving. It's like the prime minister on an airport tarmac waving to nobody for the pictures. It just kind of loses its effect, right? But so yes, he delivered a great speech, and and the 5-point plan. It goes back to hey, listen, you can't give them 100 priorities as Paul Martin did back in the day, because you lose people in priority 6, right? And I think no, he did a great job, and even some of his detractors were saying, oh, that was a great job, and I think, and then I guess the only complaint I heard was, well, where are the details? Well, guess what? You're not gonna give the details of your platform, ahead of an election. That's something you divulge during an election. So
Nobody
you don't
does
want,
that.
yeah, exactly. So you don't want somebody to steal your idea, or sit there and take aim at it and then basically come up with the exact same thing themselves. Hello, Liberal Party. So so it's like people complaining for the sake of complaining. It's like, and also here's my other rant too. So sorry about this, guys, but I want to say to conservatives, okay, the goal is to get rid of Justin Trudeau out of the prime minister's chair. That's the goal. We need to be rowing in the same direction. Let's get him out. That means we all have, like I said, we all have to row in the same directions. Brian Mulroney was down in double digits in 1984. That's why as soon as John Turner won the leadership and was sworn in as prime minister, he went to the governor general and asked for an election, because he wanted to strike while the iron is hot. I remind people that Brian Mulroney won the biggest majority in Canadian history. At one point during her premiership, Kim Campbell was ahead in the polls. People forget that Jean Chrétien and his OLO were a tire fire, and they had to change chiefs of staff. Nobody thought Chrétien could do it. People could talk about vote splitting and all that, and that's why. But anyways, all that to say, nobody thought Jean Chrétien was going to be prime minister of the country. She led and anyway, she went down to 2 seats. I could come up with a billion other examples. Stephen Harper was down in 2005 to Paul Martin, even after the government was defeated in the House of Commons on a confidence motion. Campaigns matter, but we all have to work. If we sit there and say, oh, we're not going to win, so we put our arms down and not work, well, guess what? You're going to just see Justin Trudeau get reelected. We need to work. We need to be rowing in the same directions. Everything else is negative energy. In other words, the goal is to make Aaron O'Toole prime minister. Everything else is negative energy. So let's pull up, let's get our sleeves up. Let's work. And you know what? If it's not successful, we can do the post-mortem after. But in the meantime, we need to work and all be rowing in the same direction. And you know what? If you don't have anything good to say, you know what? There's the door, and we'll handle it from there.
Unity. It's all about unity.
Yep.
Doc. Yeah, Doc.
So, you know, a couple things about the convention. I miss, you know, we all have lots of friends all over the country. I really miss seeing all of those people. You know, it's not talking to each other on chat. You know, our friends in Vancouver and Alberta and
Gord from Red Deer.
So I missed that.
From Red Deer.
And I had planned to do a Fabulous Blue Tent again for this one, but you know, it just didn't work out. I want to say that I was very impressed by Aaron's French. I think he's actually better than Mr. Harper now.
He's getting really better. Yeah,
he's really been practicing. I was very impressed. So
he's always practicing every day, and in fact, even on the leadership, he insisted to his staff that his bagman, or whatever you want to call the person next to him, would be a francophone. So no matter where they were in the country, this is pre-pandemic, that they were to speak French at all times. And a little birdie told me that before the disastrous TVA debate in the last election, Andrew Scheer was speaking English to people and wasn't in the right mindset. The leader, when he's doing something in French, it's French only around him to put him in that mindset. And he's, like I said, and I was his French teacher in 2017. Essentially, I was that person, and he's made considerable strides, and he's only going to get better.
You sound
so
good.
sorry, Doctor. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say that I find that completely true. I mean, his French is improved 100% since I've known him, and it's getting better and better and better. And you know, I liked his forthrightness. I like, you know, we are a group of 10 warring tribes at the best of times. Yeah. But you know, I agree, we need to come together and defeat what is the worst government in the history of this nation, among the worst cabinet in the history of this nation. You know, can you name one single cabinet minister who's doing his job? Sajjan should resign. You know, I mean,
that's all. You know what? I'm going to save that for another show, because
I cannot believe that he has still got a cabinet job. He has lied repeatedly. He is dishonoring his military role, and he's dishonoring cabinet.
We're going to save that for another. Actually, you know what? No, go on with your thoughts on Sajjan.
Well, I mean, my goodness, you know, Trudeau seems to not know basic things about the military. Now, if that's the case, if this had happened to Stephen Harper, he would have fired every person from the head of the PCO down to, you know, the chief of staff.
Oh yeah.
You know, they had a guy who basically was accused of a very serious crime, and you know, no one seemed to do anything about it. And I have, you know, I have a little bit of a theory that this has to do with Admiral Norman, that they used this to blackmail the chief of staff to screw Admiral Norman. That's my thinking. But you know, we need to get together. We need to speak with one voice, and that voice must be Aaron's voice. You know what? We will deal with the policy issues again. You know, he has made very good policy issues. I would have liked to hear more about his foreign policy, but he's talked about that before, and I know the people who do his foreign policy. They're good friends of mine, and I know that he's going to have robust foreign policy, which concentrates on human rights, on freedom, and that's something that, you know, I think Canadians can buy into. So, but you know what? You're right. We need to all get together and row. I like Matthew's analogy. We need to row in the same direction.
Good. Actually, you know what, Doc, I think you gave me a good way to wrap up the show. So what we're going to do is, you started it with Sajjan. I'm going to we'll let Matthew and Christine, we'll pick, we'll just say one issue, you guys, that we didn't cover today, and we'll call it like the shout out segment. So good or bad, something we didn't cover in this show. just give you like a minute or two to talk about. Matthew, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Christine, and then I'll close it. Matthew.
All right, sorry, I think I might be stealing what Christine may want to talk about, but I cannot believe in a city of Montreal with that many people that Denis Coderre is the best we could come up with. It goes by, it goes to my joke of 2020 American US elections, where my joke is always out of 330 million people, these are the two best people they could come up with. It's the same thing in Montreal. I would hope that Denis Coderre learned some modesty in losing last time, but I doubt it. There's a reason why the man had the nickname Kid Kodak when he was in Ottawa. It's the man. The man cannot. Even when he wasn't mayor, he couldn't avoid the cameras for publicity or whatever. I just don't think that he is capable to turn around this massive bureaucracy in Montreal and make the changes necessary to get the city back on track, which is badly needed. And it's funny. We had a meeting with a client, and they were asking what the situation was in municipal politics in Montreal. And I said, everything is up in the air for the simple reason that no matter what the past plans were for different departments, everything's up in the air because the city doesn't know how much revenue is coming in. It's spending more money. There's a black hole of deficit in the city. And then we had, at the time, we didn't know Coderre was going to run, but I think it was the worst kept secret in the world. And we're in a situation where you have Denis Coderre going against Valérie Plante. And I told this client, I said, listen, you guys are plugged in with other like-minded entrepreneurs and companies in Montreal. It is time for you guys to start talking to each other and find somebody you guys can all back together and get that person that's going to actually do a reform, with a reform nature in Montreal, but you have to get started. Now that Coderre is started, I don't think there's a third party candidate coming that will come through. It's going to be Plante versus Coderre. And it's like, Coderre is the worst of two evils, but it's not much of a choice. So all that to say, I swear to God, how could we not come up with somebody better than Denis Coderre? That's yesterday's news. We needed somebody else to come in to take care and ask Quebec City to get rid of 103 borough and municipal councillors to make Montreal a smaller body, because we have more councillors than the city of New York. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Good. Well done. Christine.
So I'm going to pick up on what Matt said and put sort of the spotlight on something else that's sort of, been happening
Go
in
for it.
municipal politics. We've had various municipal leaders say that they don't want to run in the next election. And they've pointed to things like, a toxic social media environment, other, parts of their leadership being criticized for no reason. Look, I think that, and I'll sort of like pick up on what Matt was saying. I think that when Denis Coderre lost the last election, people were looking for something new, right? They were looking for somebody who cared about small business, who cared about the arts, who wanted to make the city better, who wanted to put it on the map, and they didn't see that in Denis Coderre. Now we're in a situation where it's COVID-19. We know we need those elements more than ever, right?
Yep.
And we're really going to go back to the guy who couldn't do it in the first place, right? So I think that, at the same time, you've got all these leaders who are saying they don't want to run again, and people who have been doing, a fairly good job, right? We're going to bring in Coderre. God knows who's going to replace them. And so what's the future of the city, right? Yep. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Again, similar topic, just a different kind of angle to it. I love the city of Montreal. I'm a Torontonian who moved there. I think it's cool. I think it's got so much potential, and a leader. And I think Valérie Plante definitely has her strong points. She is somebody who cares about the arts. She has shown that, who cares about culture, who wants to make the city cooler and better. I really can't tell you if Denis Coderre is going to come back and pick up on that, right? And be able to do that in a situation where it's COVID-19 and we need it more than ever. So stay tuned, I guess.
Beautiful. You know what? It's a name that's been used on the show, but I had to say, I guess it was a day or two before the conservative convention. I have to give. I can't help myself. I got to be so partisan here. I have to give such a shout out to Melissa Lantsman, in the riding of Thornhill, who triumphed. She won the conservative nomination. She
Yay.
had a tough challenge from Gila Marto, the MPP there. I heard she won by about 300 votes. Um, I even say to the people who have their worries about Aaron O'Toole and whatever, with Melissa in the fold, believe me, if anyone could put anybody on the straight and narrow, it's going to be Melissa, because she is a tremendous asset. We talk about Aaron's foreign policy, about, Melissa wears foreign policy, human rights, and God, Israel. There will not be a stronger proponent for Israel. The Israel champion, it's Melissa. I mean, she wears it. And I
And
have
an
to say,
actual example of that, Jeff, sorry to
yeah, no,
interrupt
go
you.
ahead.
So when I was working in Andrew Shear's OLO, so I can't remember, it was something to do with Israel. I can't remember the exact issue, but there were lines that were sent out to all the spinners, right? All people
Right.
who do media, the personalities that would do radio and TV. And obviously Melissa was on that list. She emailed back to the list, and I had access to that email address, even though I didn't write those lines, and said, "This is weak sauce, do better." And so she challenges her own people to do better. And yeah, so just to let people know that, yeah, no, on that, she what's the word? She's a hawk. Well, she's gonna make sure that people are strong on that issue, and kick their what if they're not. So,
and it's personal to her, right? So
yeah.
there's a passion there. You can't beat that.
Israel and anti-Semitism in general. And I have to say, I worked quite a bit with her, and particularly in 2015, not as much in 2019, but certainly in 2015. And boy, I had to sometimes kind of cool her down, because boy, on that subject, oh my good, some of the stuff she wanted to do, and I said, no, whoa, wait, cool down, whoa. Just see,
Melissa is not a hawk; she's an eagle.
Oh,
and
yeah, absolutely. I think Eagles.
She is just awesome. I mean, she helped us out with the Fabulous Blue Tent. She is a new generation of leader, and I am thrilled that she had won that seat. I gave her money myself.
So did I. I am absolutely ecstatic that she. Well, I think I'm pretty obvious. So terrific congratulations. And then I'm just going to sneak in I just want to sneak in a really good word. She brings in a terrific brigade of younger conservatives. We can go through a list. Eric Duncan being another one. Perfect. They fit the tent perfect, and good and strong and passionate conservatives. I just want to give one more a real congratulations shout out from the convention. One MP who I was impressed with her before, but I think she just did, every time she was on screen at the convention, I think she did an unbelievable job. I think she's got a terrific future. Raquel Dancho out in Manitoba.
Raquel.
Sorry. I said Rachel.
No,
sorry,
yeah,
Raquel.
I've made that mistake too.
Sorry, it's Raquel. I thought she did a debate session. She talked about a couple of policy issues. She spoke fluently, fluently bilingual. I think she did an absolutely amazing job. I think her future in the Conservative Party is unbelievably bright. Coming out of Manitoba, I think it's fantastic. I think she did a great job. Raquel, if you listen to this, big thumbs up over here.
Okay? They are the face. They are the future of this party.
They really are.
And we've talked about that on a previous episode, and I couldn't be happier to have those people represent us as conservatives. And I know there are other nomination battles going on, and there's some great people fighting for those nominations, and it's just people that I've known and worked with from the past days as a staffer. But these people will be a credit to this party and put a modern face. And what the other thing that Melissa brings is the 905, right? And this modern conservative look as as opposed to this party of old white men, right? And I think that
and that's what I want to say. And it's amazing because you go,
Old
you
white
know,
men.
we're the not so feminist party, and we're going to come into an election with Raquel, with Melissa, with Stephanie Kusi,
Michelle, Michelle, the
Michelle
candidate-
Remp, of course. Michelle, I was
Yeah.
about to get there. Michelle Remp.
Yes.
These are unbelievably good, strong women. They speak well, and well, except for Michelle, but and they're bilingual. I mean, and we're coming to election with all of them.
And you know what the
pretty
best
exciting.
And the best part is they don't wait for someone to give them a spot. They take
Nope.
it.
Nope.
And they go in there and they say what they have to say, and do not and leave it all on a table. And I think that is nothing but great for our party.
And I didn't even mention there's probably another 5-6 women.
Yep.
I have them all rolling in my head, and we're going to put all these people, and they're going to be tremendous speakers, tremendous engagers. I
Yep.
mean, that part I have to say it's pretty exciting, honestly. And
Yep.
but Melissa at the top.
There's something very special about conservative women, guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Yeah.
I've worked for some tremendous ones, and
Yep.
it's actually some I wish would run in some cases, former staffers, and but yeah, no, our future is bright, and we're going in the right direction. Let's put it that way.
All right. So on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up. I think all of us, we can all agree. This is Easter weekend. See, unlike Justin Trudeau, we can say the word Easter, and I'm Jewish. I can say the word Easter too. So for everybody. Happy Easter to the Jewish community. You're wrapping up Passover tomorrow night. Fight on. The bread's coming. Don't worry. It's you guys. Even our Muslim. If we have our Muslim listeners and viewers, Ramadan's coming up in a few days.
And for the Hindu and our Hindu friends,
the holy for the Hindus. I was about to say that. Thank you, Doc. But you put it in there. Listen, all the best. The light. We sound a little grim there, as much as the liberals have really screwed this up. We know the light at the tunnel is we're getting there. Just hang on, folks, and we hope everything will turn out better. Anyway, take care. Have a good weekend. Have a good night, and we'll be back soon.
Bye.